You better stay silent, or I will ruin your brother in front of 300 guests. My wife threatened after I discovered her secret romantic relationship with my brother's bride. Instead of causing chaos, I teamed up with my brother to expose the truth. It was 3 p.m. when I entered the banquet hall looking for Carolina, my wife of 6 years. The ceremony would begin in 2 hours, and she disappeared after breakfast, saying she'd help Daniela, my brother Rodrigo's fiancée, with the final preparations. Her phone had been off since 11 a.m., something strange considering she was always glued to that thing. The Emperor Hotel was located on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens. Rodrigo had spent a fortune on that wedding. 300 guests, live orchestra, 5-course meal prepared by a Michelin-starred chef. Everything had to be perfect for Daniela, who for the last 8 months had made planning her wedding her sole reason for existing. I walked through the hotel corridors, checking the main hall, the terrace where the cocktail would be served, even the women's restrooms where I dared to knock on the door and ask for nothing. Carolina had simply vanished. I tried calling her again, but it was still off. An uncomfortable feeling began to settle in my stomach. I decided to look in the bridal suite, the place where Daniela was getting ready with her bridesmaids. I went up to the 3rd floor using the service stairs to avoid running into the first guests who were starting to arrive. The hallway was silent, carpeted in red velvet that muffled my steps. The bridal suite was at the end, a carved double wooden door. I approached slowly, mentally rehearsing what to say. "Excuse the intrusion, I'm just looking for my wife." Simple, direct, nothing dramatic. But when I was 3 meters from the door, I heard voices that made me stop in my tracks. I can't go on like this. This is killing me. It was Carolina's voice, but I'd never heard it sound so desperate, so broken. We've talked about this 1,000 times. Daniela sounded impatient, annoyed. After the wedding, everything will be different, I promise you. How many times have you promised me that? How many, Daniela? Carolina was crying. Now I could hear the choked sobs. I've been living this lie for 6 months, and I can't take it anymore. My heart began to pound. I got closer to the door, which was just ajar, enough to hear, but not to see inside. "Calm down, please." Daniela's voice softened, adopting an almost motherly tone. "It's only a few more hours. After the ceremony, after the honeymoon, we'll talk to them together. Like we planned. What if we tell them now? What if we cancel all this before it's too late?" Carolina sounded almost hysterical. I can't see him sitting in that church waiting for me, knowing I'm betraying him every day. The floor seemed to move under my feet. Betraying me. Carolina was betraying me. With whom? And what did Daniela have to do with all this? "It's too late to cancel." Daniela spoke firmly. 300 guests, Caro. 300, my family, his business partners, people who traveled from abroad. I can't humiliate Rodrigo like that. I can't destroy his reputation for a fit of conscience of yours. A fit of conscience. Carolina's voice rose. "I've been sleeping with you for 6 months behind our husbands' backs, and you call it a fit of conscience." The world stopped. The words echoed in my head like a giant bell. "Sleeping with you behind our husbands' backs, Carolina and Daniela, my wife and my future sister-in-law." Together I felt nauseous. My legs trembled, and I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. 6 months. 6 months of infidelity under my own roof. 6 months of lies while I worked 14 hours a day at my veterinary practice. While I trusted her blindly, while we planned to have children next year. "Lower your voice, please." Daniela sounded alarmed. "Now if someone hears you, what? Your perfect wedding will be ruined? Your marriage of convenience with a man you don't love." "I love Rodrigo." Daniela defended herself, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're lying. You love me. That's why we're still in this. That's why you can't leave him." There was a long silence. Then I heard a sob. I couldn't tell if it was from Carolina or Daniela, maybe both. "After the wedding, I swear." Daniela finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Give me 3 weeks of honeymoon. The time needed for everything to calm down. Then we'll talk to them. We'll get divorced, and we can be together openly, without hiding, without lies. Do you promise? Do you really promise this time?" "I promise you, my love, with all my heart." I heard a kiss. The sound pierced me like a knife. My wife was kissing my brother's fiancée 2 hours before the ceremony, planning to destroy 2 marriages after enjoying a honeymoon paid for with Rodrigo's money. The betrayal was double, triple. Not only had Carolina been unfaithful to me for 6 months, But Daniela was about to marry my younger brother, the man who'd admired me his whole life, who'd worked tirelessly to build his import company, who'd spent 5 years of savings on this wedding, and all while planning to leave him after using his last name and his money for a honeymoon in the Maldives. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. My hands were shaking. Cold sweat ran down my back. I needed to think. I needed to process this. I needed to decide what to do before it was too late. I went down the stairs, almost running. I left the hotel through a side door and sat on a garden bench hidden behind some gardenia bushes. I took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3 times. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from Rodrigo. "Where are you, bro? I need you to help me with the cufflinks. I can't get them right." I looked at the screen. My younger brother, 32 years old, successful, in love, 2 hours away from making the biggest mistake of his life. How could I tell him this? How could I destroy his special day with the truth? How could I explain that the woman he was about to swear his eternal love to was planning to leave him in 3 weeks for my wife? But then I thought, if I didn't tell him now, the marriage would be legally, financially consummated. Rodrigo would share everything with Daniela, his house, his bank accounts, his shares in the company, and when she finally decided to leave him, she'd take half of everything he'd built. I couldn't allow that. Not to my brother, not to the man who'd cried on my shoulder when Dad died, who'd helped me pay for college when Mom got sick, who'd lent me the initial money to open my veterinary clinic when the banks turned me down. I stood up. Ideas began to organize in my head. If I told them directly, Daniela would deny everything. She'd say I misunderstood the conversation, that Carolina and she were just talking about a friend. She'd make a scene, she'd cry, she'd convince Rodrigo I was jealous, crazy, trying to ruin his happiness, and he'd probably believe her. He was in love, blind, unable to see the truth. I needed proof. I needed irrefutable evidence that neither Daniela nor Carolina could deny, and I needed it before the ceremony began. I took out my phone and opened the voice recording app. I had a risky but possible idea. I went back to the hotel. I went up the service stairs again to the 3rd floor. The hallway was still empty. I approached the door of the bridal suite and knocked gently. "Who is it?" Daniela's voice sounded alarmed. "Room service." I tried to change my voice, making it higher, younger. "I'm bringing the champagne you ordered." I heard footsteps approaching. The door opened just a few inches. The security chain was still on. Daniela peeked out, her face perfectly made up, her hair in an elaborate updo. When she saw me, her eyes widened in surprise. "Sebastian, what are you doing here? You can't see me before the ceremony. It's bad luck. I need to talk to Carolina." I kept my voice neutral, controlled. "It's urgent, a problem with her mother." The lie came out naturally. Carolina's mother lived in another state and had health problems. It was a believable excuse. Daniela hesitated, her eyes sizing me up with suspicion. She finally nodded and closed the door. I heard muffled voices from the other side. Seconds later, the door opened again and Carolina appeared, her face still swollen from crying, although she tried to hide it with makeup. "What happened to Mom?" she asked with genuine concern. "Nothing," I replied simply. "I just needed you to come out." I ran out before she could react. Carolina caught up with me in the hallway, her heels clattering against the marble floor. She grabbed my arm forcefully, forcing me to stop. "What the hell was that, Sebastian? You scared me. I thought something horrible had happened to Mom." I turned to face her. The woman I'd shared 6 years of marriage with. The same one who'd sworn to love me for better or worse. The one who every night cuddled up against me and told me I was the love of her life. All lies. 6 months of lies. "We need to talk," I said with a tense voice, in private. "I don't have time for this. Daniela needs me. We still have to finish." I heard everything. "Carolina." The words came out like bullets. "Everything you talked about 10 minutes ago, every word." The color drained from her face. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I saw her searching for an excuse, an explanation, anything that could save her, but the truth was too big, too obvious to be denied. "Sebastian," I began, but I interrupted her by raising my hand. "No, I don't want to hear it here. Follow me." I walked to a small, empty conference room I'd seen earlier on the 2nd floor. Carolina followed me in silence, dragging her feet like a child on their way to punishment. I closed the door behind us. The room was small, furnished barely with a meeting table and 6 chairs. There weren't even windows. "How long?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. How long have you been sleeping with Daniela? Carolina sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Her shoulders were shaking. 6 months, she whispered. It started in March. March. Exactly 6 months ago, we'd celebrated my 34th birthday. I remembered that night perfectly. Carolina had organized a surprise dinner with close friends, including Rodrigo and Daniela. We'd all had too much wine, laughed too hard, played silly games until dawn. It had started that very night. They'd been left alone after everyone left. In my own house. Where? I demanded to know. In our house. In our bed. No. She quickly denied, looking up. Her eyes were red. Her mascara running, staining her cheeks. Never there. I would never disrespect you in that way. The irony was so absurd, I almost laughed. But sleeping with my brother's fiancée behind my back for half a year is respect, I suppose. I'm sorry. She cried. I didn't want this to happen. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Things don't just happen. Carolina. My voice rose. Decisions are made. For 6 months, you made the decision to betray me every day, every night, every time you looked me in the eye and told me you loved me. I do love you, she insisted desperately. That never changed. Daniela is different. It's complicated. Complicated. I repeated. No. What's complicated is explaining to my brother that his wedding is a sham, that the woman he's about to marry plans to leave him in 3 weeks. Did you know that? Did you know Daniela is going to use the honeymoon Rodrigo paid for with 5 years of savings to then destroy him? Carolina was silent. Her silence was answer enough. You knew, I concluded, feeling my fury grow. You knew from the beginning this would end this way, and you said nothing. Daniela promised me we'd talk to you guys after the wedding. She defended herself weakly. That we'd do it together the right way. The right way? I laughed bitterly. Is there a right way to destroy 2 lives? To steal from my brother not just his money, but also his dignity? I turned away, unable to look at her any longer. I needed to think. The ceremony would begin in less than 2 hours. I had to tell Rodrigo. I had to stop this before it was too late. But how? I just walk up and tell him his fiancée is a lesbian and in love with my wife. It would sound crazy, like jealousy, a desperate lie. Please, Sebastian. Carolina stood up and approached me. Please, don't say anything to Rodrigo. Don't ruin his day. Let me talk to Daniela. Convince her we should confess everything after the ceremony. I promise you promise. I cut her off. Your promises are worthless, Carolina. You promised to love and respect me. You promised to be faithful to me. What are those promises worth now? She opened her mouth to reply, but her phone rang. She looked at the screen. It's Daniela. She said, she's asking where I am. I have to go back. You're not going anywhere. I blocked the door with my body. Not until we decide what to do with this. Decide. And her eyes hardened. There's nothing to decide. Rodrigo is your brother, and you love him. I get that. But this is between Daniela and him. If she decided to marry him despite everything, that's her decision. A decision based on lies, I retorted. A decision that will destroy him financially and emotionally in a few weeks. I won't allow that. So you tell him? And what? He cancels the wedding. He humiliates Daniela in front of 300 guests. Carolina sounded almost hysterical. Now her family will disown her. Her father has connections in all the important companies in the city. He can ruin Rodrigo's business with a phone call. That information stopped me. Daniela's father, Don Alberto Mendoza, was indeed a powerful and influential man, owner of the largest supermarket chain in the state, with friends in politics and business. If he felt offended, publicly humiliated, he could really do a lot of damage to Rodrigo's import company. I don't care, I finally said. I'd rather Rodrigo lose his business than his dignity and his assets. Carolina's phone rang again. This time she didn't answer it. Tears continued to run down her face, completely ruining her makeup. Please, she begged again. Just give me 24 hours. One conversation with Daniela. I can convince her that the right thing to do is to confess everything before the ceremony. But if you tell Rodrigo now, without giving her a chance to do it, you'll destroy her. And she's not destroying me. She's not destroying Rodrigo. It's different. She's confused, scared. She loves Rodrigo, but she also loves me, and she doesn't know what to do. Then let her decide. I took my phone out of my pocket. Now call her. Tell her to come up here, and the 3 of us will talk. If she really wants to do the right thing, let her come and tell me to my face. Let her explain why she's about to marry my brother while planning to leave him in 3 weeks. Carolina looked at me with pleading eyes, but made no move to call Daniela. I knew. Then, she had no intention of convincing anyone of anything. She was just buying time, looking for a way out of this without consequences. My phone vibrated. Another message from Rodrigo. Where are you? It's almost time. I need you here, brother. I felt my heart break. My younger brother, the man who admired me, who trusted me, who needed me at the most important moment of his life. And I was here in an empty room, discovering that his marriage was a lie before it even began. Last words, I said to Carolina. Is there anything else I should know? Anything else you've been hiding? She hesitated. I saw the conflict on her face, the internal battle between confessing everything or protecting the last secrets. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible. Rodrigo doesn't know anything about Daniela, she admitted. He thinks she's completely heterosexual. She never told him she'd had relationships with women before. She's afraid her family will reject her if they find out the truth. And her parents know, no one knows. Only me. Not even her close friends have any idea. I processed this information. Daniela had built an entire life based on appearances. The perfect daughter, the perfect girlfriend, the perfect future wife, all while hiding her true identity for fear of family rejection. Part of me felt compassion for her. Living a lie must be exhausting. But that compassion evaporated when I remembered she was dragging my brother into that lie, willing to destroy him to maintain her facade. I'm going to talk to Rodrigo, I announced, making my final decision. I'll tell him everything. He deserves to know the truth before he signs that marriage certificate. No. Carolina tried to grab me, but I pulled away. Please, Sebastian, give me an hour. Just 1 hour. I'll let you talk to Daniela, convince her to do the right thing. If I can't get her to confess in an hour, you can tell Rodrigo everything. I promise you. Your promises mean nothing to me. Then, do it for Rodrigo. Change of tactics. If you tell him, he'll always remember this day as the moment his older brother destroyed his wedding. But if Daniela tells him herself, if she cancels the ceremony by her own decision, he'll be able to close this chapter of his life with more dignity. There was some logic in her argument, though I hated to admit it. If I went and told Rodrigo everything, he'd be devastated, confused, possibly in denial. Daniela and Carolina could deny everything, accuse me of being jealous or crazy. Without solid proof, it would be my word against theirs. But if Daniela confessed voluntarily, if she canceled the wedding by her own decision, at least Rodrigo would maintain some control over the situation. 30 minutes, I said. Finally, you have 30 minutes to convince Daniela to confess everything. If after that time she hasn't canceled the wedding, I'll talk to Rodrigo myself. 1 hour, Carolina negotiated. I need at least 1 hour to 30 minutes or nothing, I interrupted. And Carolina, if you try to warn Daniela that I know everything, if you try to run away or make up some excuse, I swear I'll make public every sordid detail of this betrayal, not just with Rodrigo, but with both families. Understood? She nodded, defeated. I looked at my watch. 4:30 p.m. The ceremony was scheduled for 6. She had exactly 30 minutes left to save something from this debacle. Go, I ordered, opening the door. The clock is ticking. Carolina ran out, her heels echoing in the empty hallway. I was left alone in that conference room, processing everything that had just happened. My marriage was over. That was for sure. There was no way to regain trust after 6 months of deliberate infidelity, but now my priority was Rodrigo, protecting him from the impending disaster. I left the room and walked to the hotel gardens. I needed fresh air, space to think. The first guests were arriving in small groups, elegantly dressed, smiling faces, oblivious to the drama unfolding on the 3rd floor. I hid behind a gazebo covered in jasmine, where I could see without being seen. My phone rang. Rodrigo again. This time I answered. Where the hell are you, brother? I've been looking for you all over the hotel. I had a problem with Carolina. It wasn't exactly a lie. I'm almost done solving it. How are you? Nervous. He admitted with a laugh. I never thought this day would come. Daniela is perfect, you know? Sometimes I wonder what she saw in me. His words were like daggers. My brother, so in love, so blind, so trusting, had no idea that the woman he considered perfect was 2 floors up, being confronted by her lover about whether or not they should ruin his life. Rodrigo, I began, but the words got stuck in my throat. How could I tell him this? How could I destroy his happiness with a simple sentence? What's wrong? He asked, his voice full of concern. You sound weird. Is everything okay? Yes. I lied. Everything's fine. I just wanted to tell you I'm proud of you. You're a great man, and you deserve to be happy. Thanks, bro. That means a lot to me. He paused. Are you sure you're okay? Because I can come wherever you are if you need me. No, I interrupted quickly. I'm fine. I'll see you at the ceremony. Okay. And Sebastian, thanks for being here, for always being here for me. He hung up before I could reply. I stared at the blank screen of my phone, feeling the weight of the betrayal like a stone in my chest. Rodrigo trusted me, admired me, needed me, and I was about to shatter his world. I looked at my watch again. 23 minutes remaining. The minutes passed with torturous slowness. I stayed in the gazebo watching the guests arrive in increasingly larger groups. I recognized several distant uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years, Rodrigo's business partners with their bejeweled wives, all smiling, all oblivious to the ticking time bomb on the third floor of the hotel. At 5:10, my phone vibrated. A message from Carolina. I need more time. Daniela is hysterical. Please, I replied immediately. Time's up in 20 minutes, not a second more. There was no reply. I decided to approach the hotel, to position myself strategically where I could intercept Rodrigo if necessary. I walked through the side garden, avoiding the main path where the guests were congregating. I entered through a service door that led directly to the kitchen, where the staff was working frantically preparing appetizers for the cocktail hour. I walked through the kitchen without anyone paying attention to me, too busy with their own tasks. I went up the service staircase to the second floor, where the groom's suite was located. I needed to be close to Rodrigo when he made the final decision. At 5:15, I arrived in front of the door of Rodrigo's suite. I could hear male voices from the other side, laughter, the sound of glasses clinking. His friends were with him, helping him get ready, joking about married life, giving him unsolicited advice on marriage. I thought about knocking on the door, about going in and asking for 5 minutes alone. But what would I say, brother? Your fiancé is in love with my wife and plans to leave you in 3 weeks. It would sound ridiculous, impossible to believe, without concrete evidence. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Carolina, this time more desperate. Daniela says she can't do it. She can't cancel. Her father would kill her. Please, Sebastian, give me more time. I looked at the message with growing anger. Daniela had no intention of confessing anything. She was just buying time, hoping I'd chicken out, that I'd decide to keep the secret to avoid a scandal. But she didn't know me well if she thought I was going to protect her lie at my brother's expense. It was 5:20. The ceremony would begin in less than an hour. The guests should already be taking their seats in the main hall. The priest would be reviewing his notes, the musicians tuning their instruments. Everything was ready for the biggest farce I'd ever witnessed in my life. I knocked on the door of Rodrigo's suite. The voices fell silent momentarily. Then I heard footsteps approaching. The door opened and Felipe appeared, Rodrigo's best friend since high school, with a glass of whiskey in his hand and a huge grin. Sebastian, you finally show up. We thought you'd run off. He stepped aside to let me in. Come in. Your brother's almost ready. I entered the suite, which was considerably larger than Daniela's. Living room, small bar, 2 bedrooms. Rodrigo was in front of the full-length mirror, adjusting his cufflinks with slightly trembling hands. When he saw me in the reflection, his face lit up. Brother, just in time. Can you help me with the tie? I can't get the Windsor knot right like you taught me. I approached him while the other 4 friends continued their conversation about soccer and politics at the other end of the room. Rodrigo turned his back to me, and I began to work on his pearl gray silk tie. Our eyes met in the mirror. You're pale, he observed. Are you sure you're okay? It's your big day. I dodged the question. How do you feel? Terrified. He admitted with a nervous smile. But happy, very happy. Daniela is everything I ever wanted in a woman, smart, beautiful, ambitious, and best of all, she really loves me. I can feel it. Every word was a stab. I finished with the tie and placed my hands on his shoulders, looking him straight in the eyes through the mirror. Rodrigo, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. His smile wavered slightly. Sure, brother, anything. Are you 100% sure you want to marry Daniela? You don't have any doubts, any strange feelings? He frowned, confused. Why are you asking that? Did something happen? Just answer the question. He turned to look at me directly, without the mirror in between. I'm completely sure, more sure of this than anything else in my life. Daniela is my future, my family, my everything. He paused. Why? Do you know something I don't? There was the perfect opportunity to tell him the truth. The words were on the tip of my tongue. Yes, I know your fiancé is in love with my wife and plans to leave you in 3 weeks, but when I opened my mouth, what came out was completely different. I just want to make sure you're making the right decision. I finally said, marriage is forever, Rodrigo. There's no turning back. I know. He squeezed my shoulder affectionately. And that's why I'm sure Daniela and I are going to build something beautiful together, a family, a life. Everything Dad would have wanted for us. Mentioning our deceased father was the final blow. Dad had died of a heart attack 5 years ago, just as Rodrigo was starting his business. His last wish had been to see us happy, married, with families of our own. Rodrigo was fulfilling that wish, or at least he thought he was. My phone vibrated again. This time it was a call from Carolina. I rejected it. Immediately it rang again. I rejected it again. Then a message came. Please, pick up. It's urgent. Excuse me for a moment. I said to Rodrigo and left the suite into the hallway. I called Carolina back. She answered on the first ring, her voice choked with sobs. Daniela isn't going to confess, she said between sobs. She says she'd rather die than disappoint her family. She's determined to go through with the wedding. Then I'll talk to Rodrigo, I replied coldly. No, please, listen to me. I have a proposal. I don't want to hear any proposal. Time's up, Carolina. What if Daniela cancels the wedding later, in 3 months, as she promised? What if she does things right, divorces Rodrigo civilly without taking anything from him, and you two can move on with your lives? Are you listening to yourself? I asked, incredulous. You're asking me to let my brother marry a woman who doesn't love him? To share his life with her for 3 months knowing it's a lie, just so she can walk away with clean hands? It's better than ruining his wedding day. She argued. It's better than humiliating him in front of 300 guests. Think about it, Sebastian. If you cancel the wedding now, Rodrigo will be devastated, humiliated, destroyed. But if the wedding happens and then Daniela leaves him in a few months, he'll be able to say it just didn't work out, that it was incompatibility. He'll be able to maintain his dignity. And what about the money he spent on this wedding? With his 5 years of savings, Daniela promises she won't take anything from him in the divorce. She'll sign a prenuptial agreement after the wedding, stating that in case of separation, each person keeps what they brought into the marriage. The offer was tempting, I admit. A clean exit, minimal scandal, maximum dignity for everyone involved. But there was a fundamental problem with that plan. I don't trust either of you, I said simply. I have no guarantee Daniela will keep that promise. For all I know, she could be saying whatever right now just to get the wedding to happen and then do whatever she wants afterwards. Then, ask for guarantees. Carolina sounded desperate. Now have her sign something, a legal document, whatever, but please don't ruin this day for Rodrigo. Let him have this happiness, even if it's temporary. I closed my eyes, trying to think clearly. My head was spinning with all the options, all the possible consequences. If I canceled the wedding now, Rodrigo would suffer immediate public humiliation, but he'd be saved from a fake marriage. If I let the wedding happen, Rodrigo would have his special day, but he'd live a lie for months. What was the lesser of two evils? I need to talk to Daniela. I finally decided, face to face. She's in the bridal suite now. I can take you. No, tell her to come down to the garden, to the Jasmine gazebo where I was before. 5 minutes. If she doesn't show up, I'm going up to get her, and I'll make the biggest scene this hotel has ever seen. She'll be there, I promise you. I hung up without saying goodbye. I briefly re-entered Rodrigo's suite, where everyone was still in their lively conversations. My brother looked at me with concern. Everything okay? Yes, just a problem with my car's parking. I already solved it. Another lie. I'd already lost count of how many lies I'd told in the last 2 hours. I'll see you at the ceremony. Okay, brother. He hugged me tightly. Thanks for being here. It means everything to me. I left before he could see the tears that threatened to well up in my eyes. I hurried down the stairs. I crossed the lobby full of elegant guests and went out into the garden. The sun was beginning to set, tinging the sky with oranges and pinks. A beautiful evening for a wedding or to destroy one. I arrived at the Jasmine gazebo and sat on the wrought iron bench to wait. The minutes passed with painful slowness. Around me, I could hear the murmur of guests heading to the main hall. The soft sound of music beginning to play inside. 5:30. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in exactly 30 minutes. Finally, I saw a figure approaching on the gravel path. It was Daniela, still in a silk robe, her hair perfectly styled, but without the veil yet. She walked slowly, with uncertain steps, as if each meter required a monumental effort. When she reached the gazebo, she stopped a meter away. Our eyes met. Her perfectly made-up eyes were red from crying. But there was something else in her expression. Determination. Carolina told me you wanted to talk. Her voice sounded hoarse, tired. Sit down. I pointed to the bench in front of me. She obeyed without protest. We sat in silence for a moment, sizing each other up. Finally, I spoke. Tell me one thing, Daniela, and be honest for once in your life. Do you love my brother? She didn't hesitate. Yes, but you love Carolina more. This time she did hesitate. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, wrinkling the silk of her robe. It's different, she finally said. What I feel for Rodrigo is real, it's deep. He's my best friend, my confidant, my partner. But Carolina awakened something in me that I didn't even know existed. Then you shouldn't marry him. And what am I supposed to do? Her voice rose, breaking. Cancel everything 30 minutes before the ceremony. Destroy my family. Ruin Rodrigo's reputation better now than in 3 months. I can't. She shook her head violently. I can't do that to him, to my family, to myself. I've worked my whole life to be the perfect daughter, the perfect girlfriend. I can't throw all that away. So you're willing to destroy Rodrigo's life just to maintain your facade? I'm not destroying him. She defended herself. I love him. I really love him. I'm going to be a good wife to him. I'm going to make him happy. While you sleep with my wife behind his back. She was silent. The truth was undeniable, inescapable. Carolina says you promised to divorce Rodrigo in 3 months without taking anything from him. I continued. Is that true? Yes. She nodded. I'm going to sign an agreement stating that in case of divorce, each of us keeps our premarital assets. Rodrigo won't lose anything, except 3 months of his life and his trust in marriage. It's better than losing his dignity today. She had a point, as much as it hurt me to admit it. If I went up now and told Rodrigo everything, the scandal would be monumental. The guests were already seated, waiting. Both families were present. The humiliation would be public, permanent, impossible to forget. But if the wedding happened and then Daniela asked for a divorce in a few months, claiming incompatibility or irreconcilable differences, Rodrigo could process the separation in private, with dignity. I want that agreement signed before the ceremony, I finally said, making my decision. A legal document stating that in case of divorce within the first year of marriage, each party keeps their original assets, and there's no division of property or alimony. I don't have time to draft a legal document, she protested. The ceremony is in 20 minutes. Then, write it by hand. I'll film it on video. It'll serve as evidence if you decide to break your promise. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and respect. And if I do, if I sign that document, will you keep quiet until after the ceremony? Yes, but you and Carolina have exactly 3 months to confess everything to Rodrigo. If you don't, I will. And I won't just tell him about the infidelity, but also about this agreement, about how you planned everything from the beginning. 3 months is very little time, she argued. 3 months or nothing, choose. She stood up and began to walk in circles, biting her lower lip. I could see the internal battle reflected on her face. Finally, she stopped and nodded. Give me a paper and pen. I'll write it now. I took a small notebook and a pen from my jacket. I handed them to Daniela, who took them with trembling hands. She sat down again on the bench and began to write while I held my phone in video mode, recording every word she put on paper. I, Daniela Ramirez Soto, she wrote in a shaky hand. I hereby declare that in case of divorce from Rodrigo Morales, within the first year of marriage, I voluntarily renounce any division of assets, properties, or alimony. Each party will retain the assets they brought into the marriage. This statement is made in full use of my mental faculties, without coercion, as a guarantee of my honest intentions towards my future husband. She signed at the bottom with her full name and the date. Then she looked at me satisfied. Add your ID number and your fingerprint. She obeyed, writing her ID number and pressing her thumb in the blue ink of the pen before stamping it in the corner of the document. I took the paper and photographed it from multiple angles, making sure everything was legible. Then I carefully put it in the inside pocket of my jacket. This has no real legal validity, Daniela pointed out. Any lawyer would throw it in the trash, but it has moral validity, I retorted, and if you decide to betray this promise, I'll make sure everyone sees this video. Your family, your friends, your colleagues, everyone will know exactly what kind of person you are. She stood up, her silk robe with automatic movements. Anything else? Yes, you and Carolina will end your affair immediately after this conversation. No secret meetings, no messages, no calls. If you're going to confess in 3 months, those 3 months will be clean, no more lies, no more betrayals. And you? She asked with a defiant voice. Are you going to stay married to Carolina for those 3 months pretending you don't know anything? That's none of your business. Of course it is. If you and Carolina separate immediately, Rodrigo will suspect. He'll ask what happened. He'll investigate, and this whole plan will fall apart. She was right. That is, if I filed for divorce now, Rodrigo would ask questions. He'd want to know why after 6 years of an apparently happy marriage, his older brother was separating right on his wedding day. And in his investigation, he could discover the truth about Daniela. Carolina and I will fake normality for 3 months. I reluctantly agreed. But understand this. My marriage ended today. I'm just waiting for the right moment to make it official, and when that moment comes, there'll be no turning back. Daniela nodded slowly. So, we have an agreement. No, we have a temporary truce. We'll have an agreement when Rodrigo knows the whole truth and can decide his future with complete information. I looked at my watch. For 15 minutes to the ceremony. You'd better go put on your dress. I said coldly. You don't want to be late for your own farce. She shot me a look full of hatred before turning around and walking quickly towards the hotel. I watched her disappear through the side door, her silk robe fluttering behind her like a flag of surrender. I was left alone in the gazebo, feeling the weight of what I'd just done. I'd had the chance to save my brother, and I'd wasted it. Or at least that's what I felt at that moment. But part of me, the part that knew Rodrigo better than anyone, knew that a public humiliation on his wedding day would have destroyed him in a different, deeper way. At least this way he'd have his special day. He'd have his photos, his memories, his moment of happiness before it all came crashing down, and when he finally found out the truth. It wouldn't be in front of 300 people, but in the privacy he deserved. I walked back to the hotel, mingling with the last guests heading to the main hall. The place looked spectacular. Lit candles on every table, floral arrangements of white roses and lilies, dim lights creating a romantic atmosphere. The temporary altar was decorated with white fabrics and more flowers. Everything was perfect, beautiful, exactly as Daniela had planned it for months. I sat in my assigned seat in the front row on the groom's side, right next to Carolina's empty chair. The other seats were occupied by close relatives, uncles, aunts, cousins. Everyone was talking in low voices, smiling, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded in the garden. At 5:55, the lights dimmed even more. The music changed to a classical piece that announced the beginning of the ceremony. The side doors opened and Rodrigo entered, walking alone towards the altar, since our father had passed away and we didn't have another close male relative to accompany him. My brother looked impeccable in his black tuxedo, his hair perfectly styled, a nervous but happy smile on his face. When he passed by me, our eyes met briefly. I nodded in approval, forcing a smile I hoped looked genuine. He took his place in front of the altar next to the priest and turned to look towards the back of the hall, waiting for his bride to enter. The music changed again, this time to the traditional wedding march. All the guests stood up. The main doors opened slowly. First came the bridesmaids, 4 of Daniela's friends dressed in pastel shades of pink, walking in pairs. Carolina was the last, wearing a lavender dress that fit her perfectly. When she passed by our row, she didn't even look at me. Her eyes were fixed ahead, her face carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in her shoulders and the tightness of her jaw. After the bridesmaids came the page boys, 2 little boys carrying the rings on white satin cushions. And finally, after a dramatic pause, Daniela appeared. I must admit, as much as it hurt, that she looked absolutely beautiful. The dress was an elaborate creation of lace and satin with a train that extended several meters behind her. The veil covered her face, but you could see enough to appreciate the perfect makeup that hid any trace of the tears she'd shed just 20 minutes ago. She walked on the arm of her father, Don Alberto Mendoza, a 60-year-old man with completely white hair, an impeccable suit, and an expression of paternal pride. He had no idea he was giving his daughter away to a marriage doomed before it began. They walked slowly down the aisle while all the guests watched in admiration. I could hear murmurs of approval, an occasional muffled exclamation at the bride's beauty. Daniela kept her eyes forward, focused on Rodrigo, who looked at her as if she were an angel descended from heaven. When they reached the altar, Don Alberto lifted his daughter's veil and gave her a kiss on the forehead before shaking Rodrigo's hand and placing Daniela's hand in his. A symbolic gesture of transfer from a man entrusting his daughter to the care of another. If he knew the truth, if he knew that gesture was completely empty, he probably would have dragged Daniel out of the hall right then and there. Everyone sat down again as the priest began the ceremony with the traditional words. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Rodrigo and Daniela in holy matrimony. I stopped listening. The words became a distant hum as my mind filled with everything I discovered in the last 2 hours. I looked at Carolina, who was standing with the other bridesmaids, her eyes fixed on Daniela, with an expression I couldn't decipher. Love, regret, relief that the secret was still safe. The priest continued with the biblical readings about love and commitment. Every word felt like a mockery. Love is patient. Love is kind. What did Daniela and Carolina know about true love? They'd betrayed 2 men who loved them unconditionally, who trusted them completely. If anyone knows any impediment why these 2 people should not be joined in marriage, the priest said with the traditional ceremonial phrase, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The silence that followed was absolute. 300 people holding their breath, hoping no one would ruin the perfect moment. I felt all eyes in the room briefly on me, as if they were unconsciously expecting the groom's brother to have something to say. I clenched my fists on my knees. The words were there in my throat, ready to come out. Stop this. The bride is in love with another woman. My wife. This marriage is a lie. It would be so easy to shout that, to stop this farce, to save my brother. But I looked at Rodrigo. I saw the pure happiness on his face, and the words died before they were born. I'd made my decision in the gazebo. For better or worse, I'd let this ceremony happen. The priest waited the appropriate amount of time and then continued. Rodrigo, do you take Daniela to be your lawful wedded wife, to love and to cherish, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, for all the days of your life? I do. Rodrigo's voice sounded firm, confident, full of conviction. Daniela, do you take Rodrigo to be your lawful wedded husband, to love and to cherish, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer? All the days of your life, there was a pause so brief that probably no one else noticed it. But I did. I saw Daniela swallow. I saw her hands grip Rodrigo's a little tighter. Then she spoke. I do. 2 words, 2 simple words that sealed the biggest lie I'd ever witnessed. I felt nauseous. The exchange of rings followed. Rodrigo slipped the white gold band on Daniela's finger with hands trembling with emotion. Daniela did the same. Her movements more controlled, more rehearsed. By the power vested in me by the church and the state, the priest announced with a solemn voice, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Rodrigo lifted the veil completely and leaned in to kiss Daniela. The kiss was long, passionate, full of promises that only one of them intended to keep. The guests burst into applause. The music began to play triumphantly. Rose petals were thrown in the air. The marriage was consummated. Rodrigo and Daniela walked together down the aisle, smiling and waving to the guests who continued to applaud. When they passed by me, Rodrigo winked at me, radiant with happiness. Daniela kept her eyes forward, her perfect mask firmly in place. The bridesmaids followed, walking again in pairs with the groomsmen. Carolina walked on the arm of Felipe, Rodrigo's best friend. For the first time since she entered the hall, our eyes met. In her eyes I saw fear, guilt, and something else. Pleading. Pleading for my silence, pleading for my understanding, pleading for forgiveness I wasn't ready to give. I looked away first. I couldn't keep looking at her without feeling like I was going to explode. The guests began to get up, moving towards the reception hall where the cocktail was already served. I remained seated, needing a moment alone before facing the farce of the celebration. My phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. Thanks for your discretion, I won't forget it. It was Daniela using a phone I didn't know, probably a secondary one she used to communicate with Carolina without Rodrigo knowing. I didn't reply. I deleted the message and put the phone on silent. I finally stood up and walked to the reception hall. The music was already playing. Waiters were circulating with trays of champagne and elaborate canapes. Rodrigo and Daniela were in the center of the hall, surrounded by guests congratulating them, taking their pictures, wishing them a long and happy life together. Lies. It was all lies. I took a glass of champagne from a passing tray and drank it in one gulp. Then I took another. The alcohol burned my throat, but it didn't manage to ease the knot I felt in my chest. Are you okay, brother? A hand rested on my shoulder. It was Rodrigo, who had momentarily escaped from the crowd surrounding him. You've been weird all afternoon. I'm fine, I lied again. Just processing that my little brother is already a married man. He laughed and hugged me. Thanks for being here. Thanks for everything you've done for me my whole life. I don't know what I'd do without you. His words were like knives in my heart. I hugged him back tightly, wishing I could protect him from what was to come in 3 months. But I couldn't. The only thing I could do was be there when it all came crashing down. Go to your wife, I finally said, letting him go. It's your special night. He nodded and went back to Daniela, who received him with a perfect smile and kissed him to the delight of the photographers present. The scene was worthy of a wedding magazine. The perfect couple, true love, the beginning of a life together. All a perfectly orchestrated lie. The reception continued with the traditional events. The first dance, the cake cutting, the toasts. When it was my turn to give a speech as the groom's brother, I went up on stage with trembling legs. Rodrigo has been my inspiration my whole life. I began, the words coming out automatically while my mind screamed the truth I couldn't say. His dedication, his loyalty, his ability to love unconditionally are qualities I deeply admire. And Daniela, I paused, looking at her directly. She held my gaze without blinking. Daniela has proven to be exactly the kind of woman my brother deserves. The irony of those words was not lost on any of the three of us who knew the truth. Carolina, sitting at the head table, looked away. Daniela kept her frozen smile. Only Rodrigo, blessed in his ignorance, applauded enthusiastically. I wish you 3 months, I finally said. Another private joke that only Daniela understood. I'm sorry, a lifetime of happiness together. The room burst into applause. I got off the stage and went straight to the bar where I ordered a double whiskey. The night continued in a blur of music, laughter, and celebration. I watched from a distance as Carolina and Daniela exchanged furtive glances when they thought no one was watching. As Rodrigo, completely oblivious, danced happily with his new wife. Around midnight, the newlyweds said goodbye to the guests. They would leave early the next morning for the Maldives for their 3-week honeymoon. 3 weeks where Rodrigo would live in a bubble of happiness while the clock kept ticking towards the inevitable end. When they finally left amidst rose petals and cheers from the guests, I felt an immense relief. At least for 3 weeks, I wouldn't have to see this farce. I wouldn't have to pretend everything was okay. The guests began to disperse shortly after midnight. Carolina and I were among the last to stay, trapped in forced conversations with relatives who wanted to know when we would take the next step and have children. Every question was torture, every fake smile a monumental effort. Finally, when the hall was practically empty except for the cleaning staff, Carolina approached me. We should go, she said in a tense voice. It's late. You go? I replied without looking at her. I'll stay and help with a few things. Sebastian, we have to talk. There's nothing to talk about tonight, please. Her hand touched my arm, but I pulled it away. We can't leave it like this. I turned to face her completely for the first time since the ceremony. What exactly do you want to talk about, Carolina? Your 6-month affair, the betrayal you committed every day while I worked to maintain our home. Or would you rather talk about how you convinced Daniela to destroy my brother's life? She looked around nervously, checking that no one was listening. Not here. At home there's no home for us, I said coldly. There's only a place where we both live temporarily until this 3-month farce is over. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Sebastian. I never wanted this to happen this way, but it did. And now we both have to live with the consequences. I took my car keys out of my pocket. Go home. I'll sleep in a hotel tonight. Tomorrow we'll talk about the arrangements for the next 3 months. Arrangements, separate rooms, separate lives. We'll keep up appearances in public for Rodrigo's sake, but in private. Our marriage ended today. Carolina sobbed openly. Now it doesn't have to be this way. We can try to fix this. Go to therapy. Fix. What exactly? I interrupted. The 6 months of infidelity, the fundamental betrayal of our relationship. No, Carolina, some things can't be fixed. Some things are broken beyond repair. I walked away before she could reply, walking quickly to the parking lot. I heard her footsteps behind me, but I didn't stop. I got in my car, started it, and drove away from the hotel without looking back. I drove aimlessly for an hour, processing everything that had happened. My marriage destroyed, my brother married to a lie. My complicity in allowing this farce to continue. The streets were empty at that hour, only neon lights from some still open bars illuminating the darkness. I finally stopped in front of a modest hotel near the center. If you divorce before 3 months, Rodrigo will suspect. We need to coordinate. I hated to admit she was right. A sudden divorce so close to his wedding would raise questions. Rodrigo would want to know what had happened, why his older brother, who seemed to have a stable marriage, was suddenly separating. Carolina and I will maintain appearances, I finally wrote, but don't ask me for more than that. Thanks, she replied. Then she added, I know you hate me, but I want you to know I really love your brother, just not in the way he needs. Those words infuriated me more than anything else. If you really loved him, you wouldn't have married him knowing you'd leave him. There were no more replies. I turned off the phone and finally fell into a restless sleep, full of nightmares about weddings that turned into funerals. The next 3 months were the hardest of my life. Carolina and I moved into separate rooms in our house, maintaining a facade of normalcy when we had visitors, but living like strangers the rest of the time. We barely spoke, except to coordinate the necessary lies. Rodrigo called regularly from the Maldives, brimming with happiness. He described the perfect beaches, the romantic dinners, how amazing Daniela was as a wife. Every word was torture, knowing it was all a temporary illusion. I've never been so happy, brother, he told me during one of those calls. Daniela is perfect. I'm thinking maybe we should start trying for kids soon. What do you think? The question left me speechless. Kids. Rodrigo wanted to bring children into this doomed marriage. Give it time, I managed to say finally. Enjoy being just the two of you for a while. You're right. Although you know I've always wanted to be a young dad. When I hung up, I had to sit down. The idea that Daniela could get pregnant before confessing the truth was terrifying. That would complicate everything infinitely more. I immediately sent her a message. You'd better be using protection. A pregnancy would change the whole agreement. Her reply came hours later. I'm on birth control. I'm not that irresponsible. The days dragged on. I worked long hours at my veterinary clinic. Anything to avoid being at home with Carolina. She seemed to be in a similar state of avoidance, leaving early and coming back late. I never asked where she spent her time. I didn't want to know. At the end of the wedding, Rodrigo and Daniela returned from their extended honeymoon. They'd added an extra week in Thailand before coming back. They organized a welcome dinner at their new apartment, a luxurious flat in a modern tower that Rodrigo had bought as a surprise for Daniela. Carolina and I attended, playing our role of a happy couple. It took all my willpower not to vomit as Rodrigo proudly showed us every room, explaining how he decorated everything specifically with Daniela's tastes in mind. This will be the baby's room, he said, pointing to an empty room with a city view. When the time comes, of course, Daniela visibly tensed, but quickly regained her composure. No rush, she said with a forced smile. We want to enjoy being just the two of us for a while. As you wish, love. Rodrigo kissed her on the forehead with such tenderness that I had to look away. During dinner, I observed the interaction between Carolina and Daniela. They were careful, too careful not to look at each other directly, not to sit too close, but there was an electric tension between them that anyone with attentive eyes could notice. I wondered if Rodrigo had noticed it, but he seemed completely oblivious, submerged in his newlywed happiness bubble. How's your clinic going, Sebastian? Daniela asked at some point, her tone perfectly cordial for Rodrigo's ears. But I could hear the real question underneath. Are you still keeping the secret? Very well, I replied in the same neutral tone. Every day brings new challenges, but I manage. Message received. I'm keeping my part of the deal. Now you keep yours. That night, when Carolina and I returned home, I finally broke my silence. 6 weeks left, I said as we entered the empty house. 6 weeks, and all this is over. What if it doesn't end? She asked softly. What if Daniela changes her mind and decides to stay with Rodrigo? Then I'll speak up. The agreement is clear, 3 months, or I reveal everything. You'll destroy Rodrigo either way. Whether Daniela confesses or you do, the result is the same. I didn't correct her. If Daniela confesses, at least Rodrigo will know she had the courage to tell the truth eventually. But if I have to do it, he'll know she planned to deceive him even after getting married. The first option leaves him with some dignity. The second, none. Carolina sank onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. This is a nightmare. A horrible nightmare. A nightmare you and Daniela created. I remembered without sympathy. Now you have to live it to the end. The following weeks passed in growing tension. Rodrigo organized several family gatherings, wanting to fully integrate Daniela into our inner circle. Every event was torture. Every smile a lie. Every hug a betrayal. With 2 weeks left until the 3-month deadline, I received an urgent call from Daniela. I need to see you now alone. What happened? Not on the phone, at the gazebo of the hotel where we got married, 1 hour. I drove there with a terrible feeling in my stomach. When I arrived, Daniela was already waiting, pacing nervously among the jasmines. She looked haggard, with deep dark circles under her eyes and trembling hands. I can't do it, she said as soon as she saw me. I can't confess to Rodrigo. It would destroy him and my family. My father would kill me if he knew the truth. We had an agreement. I know, but things have changed. These last few months with Rodrigo have been different. Good. I've realized maybe I can make this work. I can be the wife he needs. While you're still in love with Carolina, I can get over it. I'll end things with her completely. I'll focus on my marriage. Give me that chance. No, I said firmly. The deal was 3 months. The deadline is in 2 weeks. Either you confess or I do. Please. Tears were running down her face. Now I'm begging you. Give me 6 more months. A year. The time I need to do this. We're not negotiating this again, Daniela. The answer is no. Then I'll lose everything. Her voice broke. My marriage, my family, my reputation. Everything. You should have thought of that before you married him. And what about Carolina? She asked desperately. If I confess about me, I'll have to confess about her too. You'll expose her just like me. Carolina made her choices. Now she has to face the consequences. Daniela looked at me with pure hatred. You're a hypocrite. You're so eager to avenge your own failed marriage that you're willing to destroy your brothers in the process. This isn't about revenge, it's about truth. Rodrigo deserves to know who he's really married to, and if it breaks his heart, and if it destroys him. Can you live with that? I can live knowing I did the right thing. Can you say the same? She didn't answer. She turned and walked away, her steps echoing on the gravel path. I watched her disappear in the distance and felt the end was inevitably approaching. 2 weeks later, exactly 3 months after the wedding, the moment of truth arrived. I sent a message to Daniela. The deadline is today. Did you talk to Rodrigo? Hours passed without a reply. I called Rodrigo directly. Brother, I need you to come to my house tonight. It's important. Is everything okay? You sound serious. Just come. Bring Daniela. She can't. She's in bed with a migraine. She's been sick all day. Of course she was sick. She knew this day would come, and she'd been avoiding it. Then, just you at 8. It's urgent. I hung up before he could ask more questions. Then I called Carolina. Come home at 8. Rodrigo will be here. It's time he knows everything. Sebastian, wait. No more waiting. It's over. 8 o'clock arrived. Rodrigo knocked on the door exactly on time, always punctual. I let him in and led him to the living room. 5 minutes later, Carolina arrived, pale and trembling. What's going on? Rodrigo asked, looking between the two of us. Why are you so serious? Did something happen? I sat down in front of him. Carolina remained standing near the door, as if ready to escape at any moment. Rodrigo, I began, my voice surprisingly calm. There's something you need to know about your wife. Something I should have told you 3 months ago, but my phone rang, interrupting me. It was Daniela. I answered. Don't do it, she pleaded, her voice hysterical. Please, Sebastian, I'll give you whatever you want, money, property, anything. Just don't tell him. It's too late. I said and hung up. Rodrigo stood up. Is someone going to explain what the hell is going on here? I took a deep breath. This was the moment. There was no turning back. On your wedding day, I began. I overheard a conversation between Carolina and Daniela. What conversation? Rodrigo asked, his voice filled with confusion and a touch of alarm. What does Daniela have to do with this? I looked at Carolina, giving her one last chance to be the one to speak. She shook her head, tears already running down her cheeks. Very well, I'd do it. I heard Daniela and Carolina talking before your ceremony. I continued, every word weighing like lead. They were talking about their relationship, their romantic relationship, one that had started 6 months before your wedding. The silence that followed was absolute. Rodrigo looked at me as if I'd spoken to him in a foreign language, processing the words but unable to understand their meaning. What? What are you saying? His voice came out as barely a whisper. Carolina and Daniela have been having an affair. Daniela planned to marry you and then leave you in 3 months to be with Carolina. I knew it on your wedding day, but I decided to let you have that day, to give you those months of happiness before you're lying. Rodrigo exploded, his face turning red with fury. You're lying. Daniela loves me. We just got married. We're planning our future together. Why would you make up something so cruel? I'm not making anything up. I took out my phone and looked for the video I'd recorded 3 months ago. The video of Daniela writing and signing the impromptu prenuptial agreement. This proves it. Rodrigo snatched the phone from my hands and played the video. I saw him progressively turn pale as he listened to Daniela's voice on the recording, as he read the words she herself had written. In case of divorce, within the first year of marriage, I voluntarily renounce any division of property. What is this? He whispered. What the hell is this? It's the agreement I made with Daniela on your wedding day. I gave her 3 months to confess the truth to you before I did it myself. Today is exactly 3 months. Rodrigo turned to Carolina, who was still crying silently. Tell me it's a lie, he demanded. Tell me my brother is making all this up for some twisted reason. Carolina opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her silence was more eloquent than any confession. Answer me, Rodrigo shouted, his voice breaking. It's true, Carolina finally whispered. It's all true. I'm so sorry, Rodrigo. We never wanted to hurt you. Rodrigo staggered back as if he'd been physically struck. He dropped onto the sofa, the phone still in his hand, the video playing on a loop. His face went through a series of emotions, shock, disbelief, pain, and finally a devastating fury. How long? He asked with a trembling voice. How long have you been together? 6 months before the wedding, Carolina admitted. It started without us planning it. It just happened. Things don't just happen, Rodrigo snapped, repeating the same words I'd used with Carolina 3 months ago. And Daniela, she knew from the beginning she was going to leave me. She married me knowing it was temporary. She was confused, Carolina tried to explain. She loves you, Rodrigo, she really does. Just she also loves me, and she didn't know what to do. Then she doesn't get married, he shouted, jumping to his feet. If she wasn't sure, if she had doubts, then she cancels the wedding. She doesn't marry me and make me believe we have a future together while planning to leave me. He took out his own phone and dialed frantically. Daniela answered on the 3rd ring. Where are you? Rodrigo demanded without preamble. Daniela's voice was heard faintly from the other side. At home, love. Still with a migraine. What happened with Sebastian? Did you talk? Come here now, to my brother's house. What? Rodrigo, I feel terrible. I can't drive. I don't care. Take a taxi, an Uber, whatever. You have 30 minutes to get here, or I'm coming to get you, and I'll drag you if I have to. Love, what's wrong? You're scaring me. You already know what's wrong, Sebastian shouted. He told me everything. About you, Carolina. Everything. There was a silence from the other side of the line, then a muffled sob. I'm on my way, Daniela said in a broken voice and hung up. Rodrigo sank back onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. His shoulders were shaking. I wasn't sure if he was crying or trying to control his fury. Why? He finally asked, his voice muffled. Why didn't you tell me on the wedding day? Why did you let me marry her knowing it was a lie? Because I thought a public humiliation on your wedding day would be worse than this. I admitted. I thought at least this way you'd have your memories, your photos, your special moment before finding out the truth. Maybe I was wrong. You were wrong, he confirmed bitterly. I wasted 3 months of my life living a lie. 3 months making plans for a future that never existed. 3 months loving someone who never really loved me. She does love you, Carolina intervened weakly. Just differently, as a friend, as a partner, but don't tell me how she loves me." Rodrigo cut her off. "You have no right to speak. You were part of this betrayal from the beginning. What kind of person sleeps with her brother-in-law's fiancé? What kind of woman does that?" Carolina had no answer. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. The next 30 minutes were the longest of my life. Rodrigo paced back and forth like a caged animal, alternating between fury and devastation. Carolina cried in her corner. I remained silent, letting them process the impact of the truth. When the doorbell finally rang, the three of us tensed. I went to open it. Daniela was there, hastily dressed, her hair uncombed, her face without makeup and marked by crying. She looked small, vulnerable, completely different from the radiant bride of 3 months ago. Rodrigo started as soon as he saw me, but he appeared behind me before I could continue. "No," he said in a cold voice. "Don't say my name. Don't say anything to me yet. Come in." Daniela entered with trembling steps. She saw Carolina on the floor, and her face fell even more if that was possible. "Sit down," Rodrigo ordered, pointing to a chair. Daniela obeyed without protest. Now Rodrigo continued, his voice dangerously calm. "You're going to tell me everything from the beginning? No lies, no excuses, no trying to sugarcoat anything. I want the whole truth." Daniela nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "It started in March." She began in a hoarse voice. "Your birthday, Sebastian. That night we all drank too much. I stayed to help Carolina clean up after everyone left. We were laughing, joking, and then we kissed. We didn't plan it. It just happened." "Things don't just happen," Rodrigo repeated for the third time that night. "Continue." "After that kiss I tried to keep my distance, I swear. But Carolina kept seeking me out, messages, calls, casual encounters that weren't casual. And I couldn't resist. I was drawn to her in a way I'd never experienced. Not even with me." Rodrigo's voice broke slightly. "Different," Daniela said, echoing the words she'd used months ago. "What I feel for you is real, Rodrigo. I love you. You're my best friend, my confidant, but not your romantic partner," he shouted. "Not the person you really desire. Admit it." "Not in that way," Daniela whispered. "Not in the way you deserve. I'm so sorry." And all this time, Rodrigo continued, his fury renewed. "All the time we were planning the wedding, spending my savings on that perfect day, making plans for our future. You knew it was a lie? I didn't know what to do." Daniela cried. "My family expected this wedding. Your family, everyone. And I couldn't disappoint them. I couldn't admit She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "Lesbian," Rodrigo completed bitterly. "The word you're looking for is lesbian, and you couldn't admit it because that would ruin your perfect image of an obedient, heterosexual daughter. My father would disown me," Daniela admitted. "My whole family would turn their backs on me. I'd lose everything, and I lost everything anyway." Rodrigo exploded. "I lost my dignity, my trust, my damn 5 years of savings, everything so you could keep your farce for a few more months." He turned to me, his face contorted with pain. "And you knew. You knew on my wedding day, and you didn't tell me anything. I thought I was protecting. You weren't protecting me." He interrupted me. "You were using me as an excuse not to make a difficult decision. You could have stopped me before I signed that certificate, before I consummated that marriage, before I wasted 3 months of my life, but you chose your comfort over my well-being." His words hit me like fists. He was right. I'd rationalized my silence as protection when in reality it was cowardice. "You're right," I admitted. "I'm sorry, Rodrigo. I should have told you immediately." "Everyone's sorry," he said bitterly. "Everyone's very sorry, but no one thought of me when they made their selfish decisions. None of you." He headed for the door, but Daniela stopped him. "Where are you going?" "Away from here, away from all of you." "Rodrigo, please, can we talk about this? Find a solution?" "A solution?" He laughed humorlessly. "The solution is simple, immediate divorce. And if you try to fight for anything that's mine, I swear I'll make public every sordid detail of this betrayal. Your father, your family, everyone will know exactly what kind of person you are." "I don't care," Daniela said with sudden determination. "I don't care about keeping the farce anymore. If they're going to disown me, so be it. At least it'll be the truth." "How noble of you," Rodrigo snapped. "Too bad you didn't have that courage 3 months ago." He slammed the door, shaking the walls. We heard his car start and speed away. Daniela collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Carolina crawled from her corner and tried to comfort her, but Daniela pushed her away. "Don't touch me," she said in a broken voice. "This is your fault. If you hadn't seduced me that day, none of this would have happened." "I seduced you," Carolina replied incredulously. "You were the one who kissed me first. You were the one who kept seeking me out afterwards because you made me feel things I'd never felt. You confused me. You made me question everything I knew about myself." "I didn't make you do anything," Carolina retorted. "You made your own decisions, and now we have to live with the consequences." I watched them fight. Two women who destroyed two marriages for a passion that now turned against them. Part of me felt satisfaction seeing them suffer. But another part, the part that still remembered the good times with Carolina, just felt a deep sadness for everything that had been lost. "Both of you leave," I finally said. "Get out of my house and sort out your mess somewhere else." They left without protesting. Carolina first, then Daniela. I was left alone in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of what were once four intertwined lives, now shattered beyond repair. Over the following weeks, my family completely imploded. Rodrigo initiated immediate divorce proceedings, demanding an annulment for fraud. Daniela didn't fight, signing everything they put in front of her. Her family, upon learning the real reason for the divorce, effectively disowned her. Her father stopped speaking to her. Her mother cried, saying she'd lost a daughter. Carolina and I also divorced. A quick, drama-free process after everything else. We divided our assets equally. She moved to another state, looking for a new beginning away from the scandal. The gossip inevitably spread. In a city where everyone knows everyone, it was impossible to keep such a juicy story secret. I was judged by many for having kept the secret, applauded by others for finally telling the truth. Rodrigo didn't speak to me for 6 months. Every time I tried to call him, he'd reject the call. Every message went unanswered. I'd lost not only his marriage, but also his trust in me. His older brother, who was supposed to protect him. A year after that fateful wedding day, Rodrigo finally agreed to meet me. In a neutral cafe, far from places that could bring back painful memories. We sat across from each other for the first time in months. "I haven't forgiven you." Those were his first words. "I don't know if I ever will completely." "I understand." I replied. "I don't expect your forgiveness. I just hope that eventually you can understand why I made the decisions I did, even if they were wrong." "I've had a lot of time to think," he continued, "and I think I understand your reasoning. You were in an impossible position. Any decision you made would have had terrible consequences. That doesn't excuse the fact that I lied to you, that I let you get married knowing the truth." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't excuse it, but I can't keep blaming you for the rest of my life either." Daniela and Carolina made their decisions. I made mine by trusting blindly without seeing the signs. "And you made yours by trying to protect me in the wrong way." "Signs?" I asked. "Were there signs?" In retrospect, yes. Little things I ignored because I was in love. The way Daniela looked at Carolina, how they always found excuses to be alone. Their constant messages, but I chose not to see them because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. We sat in silence for a moment, drinking our coffees, processing everything we'd lost and learned. "Did you hear anything from them?" he finally asked. "Carolina moved to another city. I heard she's working in a new office, starting from scratch." "Daniela," I paused. Daniela reconciled with her family after 6 months. She lied to them, told them it was all a misunderstanding, that I'd made up the story because I was jealous. Her father believed her, or wanted to believe her. "Of course," Rodrigo said bitterly. "Daniela was always good at lying. I guess even now she's still living her lie." "And you?" I asked. "How are you really?" "Better," he admitted. "Not good, but better. Therapy helps, time helps, and honestly part of me feels relieved. Relieved. Relieved not to be trapped in a loveless marriage. Relieved to know the truth before bringing children into that situation. Relieved to have discovered who Daniela really was before wasting more years of my life." He extended his hand across the table. "Thanks for finally telling me, even though it took time, even though it hurt. Thanks for not letting me live that lie forever." I took his hand, feeling tears sting my eyes for the first time since all this began. "You'll always be my brother, and I'll always try to protect you, even if I do it the wrong way sometimes." "I know," he said, "and eventually we'll be okay again, but for now I need time." I nodded, understanding. We said goodbye at the cafe door. A brief but meaningful hug. As I drove home, I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the betrayals, the pain. But I also thought about the truth finally revealed, about the freedom we all eventually find by letting go of the lies that bind us. It wasn't the happy ending Rodrigo deserved. It wasn't the clean ending I'd hoped for, but it was an honest ending. And sometimes honesty is the only kind of closure that really matters. Years later, Rodrigo would marry again, this time to a woman who loved him genuinely and completely. I too would find a new partner, someone who valued honesty above all else. Carolina and Daniela never ended up together. What seemed like an irresistible passion crumbled under the weight of guilt and consequences. Last news I heard was that they were both with other partners, living separate lives in different cities. But at that wedding 3 years ago, at that moment when I decided to keep quiet, I learned the most important lesson of my life. The truth hurts, but lies destroy. And although we sometimes seem to protect others by hiding painful realities, we're only prolonging the inevitable. Rodrigo was right to be furious with me. He was right to feel betrayed not only by his wife, but also by me, because in the end we're all responsible not only for our own lies, but also for the lies we choose to keep for others. Life goes on as it always does. Wounds heal, although they leave scars. Broken trusts are slowly rebuilt, stone by stone, and the lessons learned become the wisdom we carry forward. That wedding that seemed like the beginning of something beautiful turned out to be the end of many things. Marriages, trusts, illusions. But it was also the beginning of something important, the truth. And although the truth is painful, in the end it's always better than the most comfortable of lies. Have you ever kept a secret you knew would eventually destroy someone you love? How would you handle a situation where revealing the truth means causing immediate pain, but hiding it means allowing greater harm over